The science behind strong and aesthetic arms. All right, folks, let's talk about arms. Everyone wants arms that not only look good, but also perform well. The trick is there's actually science behind building strong and aesthetic arms, not just random curls until your elbows fall off. First, let's start with the basics. Your arms aren't just biceps. Sure, the biceps look cool in a t-shirt, but the triceps make up almost 2/3 of your upper arm size. So, if you want impressive arms, ignoring triceps is like skipping 70% of the job. Second, progressive overload is king. Your muscles don't care if you're doing barbell curls or dumbbell curls. They care if the tension is increasing over time. If you're lifting the same weights week after week, you're not growing. You've got to add weight, reps or sets, something to push the adaptation. Third, exercise selection matters. You want to train the muscles through a full range of motion. That means curls that stretch the biceps at the bottom and tricep work that challenges them in the lengthened position. No half reps, no swinging like you're in a dance club. Controlled full reps will beat sloppy momentum any day. Lastly, recovery is where the growth happens. You can smash your arms with the perfect workout, but if you're not sleeping enough, eating enough protein, and giving your arms a couple of days to actually rebuild, guess what? No growth. Training breaks the muscle down. Recovery builds it back bigger and stronger. So if you want arms that are both strong and aesthetic, train smart, overload gradually, use full ranges of motion, and respect recovery. That's the science, and it works every time. All right, folks, let's dive deep into something that almost everybody overlooks when they start training arms. When people think big arms, 9 times out of 10, they immediately picture the biceps. That big round ball at the front of the arm that pops when you flex in the mirror. Makes sense. Biceps are visually front and center. In movies, cartoons, and even bodybuilding magazines have always made them the star of the show. But here's the deal. If you want arms that are truly impressive, not just from the front, but from every angle, you need to understand that the triceps are actually doing the heavy lifting when it comes to arm size. They're not just some little afterthought. They make up about 2/3 of the total muscle mass in your upper arms. That means, mathematically speaking, if you train only biceps, you're ignoring the majority of your arm's potential for growth. Think about it this way. If you're trying to build a house and you spend all your time painting the front door, but never put up the walls or roof, are people going to be impressed? No. They'll see a door standing there in the dirt. That's what only training biceps looks like. From the front, maybe you've got a little bump, but from the side and back, nothing to see. The arms look flat, they don't fill out a shirt, and they're not balanced. Now, when you train the triceps properly, suddenly your arms have that thickness. The horseshoe shape on the back of the arm makes them look complete. You fill out your sleeves not just on the front, but all the way around. And it's not just about looks. The triceps are also critical for pressing strength. Anytime you push bench press, overhead press, dips, the triceps are the ones locking out the movement. Stronger triceps means stronger presses, and stronger presses mean more muscle growth, all around. So if you're chasing performance and not just aesthetics, neglecting your triceps is like trying to race a car with 2 flat tires. It's just not going to get you where you want to go. Now here's where the science really helps. The triceps aren't just one muscle, they have 3 distinct heads. The long head, the lateral head, and the medial head. Each one plays a role in how your arm looks and performs. The long head runs down the back of your arm and gives you that big slab of muscle you see when your arm is hanging by your side. The lateral head gives you that outer sweep, the part that makes the arm look wide. And the medial head is smaller, deeper, but contributes to overall thickness and strength. If you're only doing pushdowns on the cable machine, you're barely scratching the surface. To grow all 3 heads, you need variation in your triceps training. Overhead movements to hit the long head, pushdowns or close grip pressing for the lateral head, and controlled pressing to build overall size. Here's the cool part. When you really put focused effort into your triceps, you don't have to spend endless hours curling. Your arms will still look incredible. I've seen guys with average biceps but well-developed triceps, and their arms look huge. On the flip side, I've seen plenty of guys who curl like maniacs, but skip triceps work, and their arms always look unfinished, like they're only halfway built. This isn't opinion, this is anatomy. 2/3 of the muscle mass is behind the arm, so why wouldn't you train it? But I get it, triceps training doesn't feel as sexy as biceps curls. You don't get that immediate pump in the mirror. You don't get to roll up your sleeves and flex the way you do with biceps. But this is where discipline comes in. If you want arms that turn heads, you've got to think long term. You've got to think about what your arms look like in motion from the side when you're pressing, when you're holding something. Triceps give you that full, powerful look. And let's clear up another myth. Training triceps doesn't just make your arms bigger, it makes your arms look sharper and more aesthetic. That horseshoe shape I mentioned earlier, that's what makes an arm look carved and athletic, not just bulky. When you have developed triceps, your arms take on that 3D effect where they pop in every angle. It's the difference between looking like you just curl sometimes and looking like you actually train seriously. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, won't my triceps grow from bench pressing and overhead pressing anyway? And yes, they will, but only to a point. Compound lifts are great, but they don't maximize triceps growth because they're not isolating the muscle through a full range of motion. They're a piece of the puzzle, but not the whole picture. If you're pressing heavy but never doing direct triceps work, you're leaving gains on the table. And let me tell you, those direct movements like overhead extensions, skull crushers, dips, or rope pushdowns done with good technique are exactly what makes the difference between average arms and arms that stand out. So here's the takeaway. If you want arms that are strong and aesthetic, you need to stop obsessing over just biceps curls and start giving the triceps the attention they deserve. They are literally the majority of your upper arm. Train them smart, hit all three heads with a variety of movements, overload them gradually, and watch how quickly your arms transform. When the triceps grow, your arms don't just look a little better, they look dramatically bigger, fuller, and more complete. Bottom line, the biceps are the front door, but the triceps are the house. Build the house first, and the door will look a whole lot better. All right, let's really hammer down into this idea of progressive overload. Because if there's one principle that separates people who actually grow bigger, stronger arms from people who just kind of look the same year after year, it's this one. Progressive overload is the simple but powerful concept that your muscles only adapt when you give them a reason to. They don't care how much you want them to grow, they only respond to stress that challenges them beyond what they've already adapted to. In plain English, if you're lifting the same weights for the same sets and reps every single week, your body has absolutely no reason to change. It's already strong enough to do that. Why would it waste valuable resources building bigger muscles to handle a challenge it's already mastered? Think of it like school. If you take the same math test every week, after a couple of weeks, you know all the answers. You don't study anymore. You don't learn anything new because you don't need to. But if every week the teacher adds harder questions, suddenly you have to study. Your brain adapts and your skills improve. Training works the same way. If you're curling the same 20-pound dumbbells you curled last summer, your arms are basically taking the same easy test over and over. They've stopped studying. No wonder they're not growing. Now, progressive overload doesn't just mean lift heavier weights every single workout. That's a common misconception. And honestly, it's why a lot of people either burn out or get injured. You can't just slap 5 more pounds on the bar forever. At some point, you'll stall because muscles don't grow in a straight line forever. Instead, progressive overload means finding some way, any way to increase the challenge over time. That can be adding weight, yes, but it can also mean adding reps, adding sets, improving your range of motion, slowing down the tempo, or even reducing rest time to keep the muscles under tension longer. All of those are valid ways of making the muscle work harder than it did last time. Let's take a real example with biceps curls. Suppose you're doing 3 sets of 10 with 20 pounds. Great. The next week, maybe you can do 3 sets of 11 with the same weight. That's progressive overload. Or maybe you stick with 3 sets of 10, but use 22.5 pounds, again, overload. Or maybe you keep the same weight and reps, but this time you lower the dumbbells more slowly and control the negative part of the movement, making the muscle work harder through time under tension. Boom, another form of overload. The point is, you're not just going through the motions. You're finding a way to push the envelope. Here's why this matters so much for our arms specifically. Arm muscles, biceps, triceps, forearms, are relatively small compared to your quads, chest, or back. Because they're smaller, the progress is often slower and more subtle. People get impatient, and instead of sticking to the principle of progressive overload, they just do more random exercises. They think variety is the key. I'll do 15 different curl variations that'll shock my biceps into growth. But muscles don't care about variety. They care about being challenged. You could do 1 curl variation for months and grow just fine as long as you're progressing in some way. On the flip side, you could do 10 different curls but never increase the weight or reps, and you'll stay exactly the same. Variety isn't overload. Effort over time is overload. Now, here's another important point. Progressive overload works best when it's gradual. Too many lifters treat it like a sprint, when really it's a marathon. You don't need to add 10 pounds every week. In fact, that's usually a recipe for bad form, injury, or just hitting a plateau faster. Slow, steady progress is the name of the game. If you can add 1 rep a week over a couple of months, you've made massive gains. Think about it. If you start at 3 sets of 10 curls with 20 pounds, and over 12 weeks, you build up to 3 sets of 15 with the same weight, that's 50% more volume. That's a ton of progress, and you didn't even increase the weight yet. Add weight after that, and suddenly you're doing things your arms couldn't dream of 12 weeks ago. And let's not forget, overload applies to triceps just as much as biceps. Close grip bench, skull crushers, rope pushdowns, overhead extensions. If you're not tracking progress on these in pushing to improve over time, your triceps are going to stay soft and unimpressive. You've got to treat arm training like a science experiment. Keep records, know what you did last week. Walk into the gym with a plan to do just a little more. That small, consistent progression is what builds the freaky arms people notice. One last piece of the puzzle, progressive overload is only effective if you're doing it with good technique. It doesn't count as overload if the only thing progressing is your ego. If you're swinging the dumbbells more, using momentum, cutting the range of motion shorter, that's not overload, it's cheating. True progressive overload means the muscles themselves are doing more work, not that you found clever ways to make the lift easier. So stay honest with your form and let the numbers climb slowly but surely. At the end of the day, progressive overload is what separates the gym goer who looks the same year after year from the one who builds arms that actually turn heads. It's not about doing something flashy. It's about being consistent, tracking your progress, and forcing your body to adapt. If you can embrace that mindset, your arms have no choice but to grow. When it comes to building arms that are both strong and aesthetic, the exercises you choose and the way you perform them matter a whole lot more than most people think. A lot of lifters treat arm day like a free-for-all. Grab some dumbbells, swing them around, chase the pump, and then wonder why their arms look the same year after year. But if you really want arms that pop from every angle, you've got to understand the importance of exercise selection and full range of motion. These aren't just fancy buzzwords. They're the foundation for maximizing muscle growth. Here's the deal. Muscles grow best when they're trained through their full contractile range, from a deep stretch to a hard contraction. Half reps, swinging, or cutting things short rob the muscle of stimulus. Imagine trying to inflate a balloon, but only blowing in tiny puffs of air. Sure, it might look like it's growing at first, but you'll never reach its full-size potential. Same thing with your muscles. If you don't train them fully, they'll never fully develop. Take the biceps, for example. They look impressive when flexed, but the most powerful stimulus for growth doesn't come from the top squeeze, it comes from the stretch at the bottom. When you let your arms fully extend and the biceps stretch under load, you're putting the muscle in a position where it has to fight hardest. That's where a lot of the magic happens. But most people cut the bottom short, curling only halfway up and halfway down. They're basically robbing themselves of the most productive part of the movement. Now let's flip to triceps. Same idea. Pushdowns are fine. But if all you ever do are cable pushdowns, you're missing out on training the long head of the triceps in its lengthened position. That long head only really gets hammered when your arms are overhead. Think skull crushers, overhead extensions, or pressing from an incline. If you leave those out, your triceps won't have that thick horseshoe look that makes the arms complete. Instead, you'll have a little bit of pushdown strength and not much else to show. This is why exercise selection matters. You don't need a million different exercises. What you need are the right exercises, ones that train the muscle through a long range of motion, hit the different functions of the muscle, and allow you to progressively overload without wrecking your joints. For biceps, that means mixing curls that load the muscle when it's stretched, like incline dumbbell curls, with curls that load it more in the shortened position, like concentration curls. For triceps, that means combining pushdowns or close grip presses with overhead movements. When you cover all those bases, your arms not only grow bigger, but they grow in a way that looks balanced and aesthetic. And let's be honest, aesthetics matter. Nobody cares how much you curl if your arms look flat and awkward. Aesthetic arms are full, round, and flow naturally with the rest of your physique. That comes from complete development. If you skip full range of motion or only pick the easiest, flashiest exercises, you'll end up with arms that might feel pumped in the gym but look underwhelming outside of it. On the other hand, if you commit to selecting exercises intelligently and executing them fully, you'll develop arms that look thick from the side, wide from the front, and detailed from the back. That's the 3D effect everyone chases. Now, some people argue, but I feel more of a pump when I do partial reps, or I can use heavier weight if I don't go all the way down. Sure, but here's the truth. The pump is not the same as growth. Feeling a burn doesn't necessarily mean the muscle is getting the right stimulus, and using more weight with sloppy form, that's just an ego lift. The muscle doesn't care how heavy the dumbbell says it is. It only cares about the tension you're putting on it. A lighter weight used through a controlled full range of motion will beat a heavier sloppy lift every single time for muscle growth. And this isn't just theory, it's physiology. Muscles have different points in their length where they're more sensitive to growth stimulus. The stretched position is especially powerful because it activates pathways that signal the muscle to grow bigger and stronger. By skipping that stretch, you're basically cutting out one of the most potent tools you have for growth. So yes, the science absolutely backs up why full range matters so much. Here's a practical example. Imagine two lifters doing skull crushers. One lowers the bar halfway down and then locks out quickly. The other lowers it all the way behind the head, letting the triceps stretch fully, then drives up with control. Who do you think is going to have bigger triceps 6 months from now? The second lifter? No contest. The first one might brag about lifting more weight, but the results won't show in their arms. Another benefit of good exercise selection and full range of motion is joint health. A lot of people wreck their elbows or shoulders doing arm training because they pick poor movements and perform them poorly. When you choose exercises that fit your body mechanics and perform them fully but with control, you protect your joints while maximizing muscle stimulus. That means not only better growth now, but the ability to keep training hard for years. And consistency is the ultimate growth hack. If you're injured and sidelined, you can't progress. So the bottom line is this. If you want arms that are strong, aesthetic, and built to last, you've got to pick exercises that actually challenge the muscle in the right ways, and then perform those exercises through their full range of motion. Don't cheat yourself with half reps. Don't get distracted by chasing the pump alone, and don't waste your time on flashy moves that don't deliver. Master the basics, do them properly, and keep progressing. That's how you build arms that aren't just big in the gym mirror, but impressive in real life too. Here's the truth that a lot of people don't want to hear. You don't actually grow in the gym. That might sound strange because the gym is where you do the work, where you lift the weights, where you feel the pump, but the lifting part is just the spark. It's what triggers the process. The actual growth, the rebuilding of muscle tissue, the improvement in strength, all of that happens outside the gym when you're recovering. If you miss this piece of the puzzle, it doesn't matter how perfect your training program is. Without recovery, your arms will never reach their full potential. Think about what training really is. Every time you do curls or skull crushers or presses, you're not building muscle in that moment, you're breaking it down. Tiny little tears happen in the muscle fibers, and that's why you feel sore afterward. That breakdown is necessary, but it's not the end of the story. Your body sees that damage and says, okay, clearly we need to be better prepared for this kind of stress next time. Then it goes to work repairing the muscle fibers, adding more protein, making them thicker and stronger. That rebuilding process is what makes your arms grow. But here's the catch. If you don't give your body the resources and the time to do that, you stay stuck in the breakdown phase. You'll just spin your wheels, always training, never really improving. So what does recovery really mean? Let's break it down. First and foremost, sleep. If you're not sleeping enough, you're not growing. Period. Sleep is when your body does the bulk of its repair work. Growth hormone spikes during deep sleep. Protein synthesis happens. Inflammation goes down. It's like your body's construction crew clocks in as soon as you hit the pillow. But if you're only getting 4 or 5 hours a night, that crew barely has time to lay the foundation before you wake up and break things down again in the gym. 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep isn't a luxury. It's the bedrock of recovery. Next up is nutrition. You can't build a house without bricks, and you can't build muscle without fuel. Protein is the star here. Your arms need amino acids to rebuild the fibers you just stressed. If your protein intake is low, you're basically handing the construction crew an empty toolbox. Aim for enough protein spread throughout the day. Chicken, beef, fish, eggs, dairy, or even plant sources if you're vegan. On top of that, carbs aren't the enemy, they're fuel. They refill your glycogen stores so you can train hard again. And they also help drive recovery. Fats are important too, especially for hormones, but the main point is this. You need to eat enough, period. If you're under-eating, your body isn't going to prioritize building muscle. It'll just try to survive. Then there's rest between training sessions. A lot of people think, well, if I train arms every single day, they'll grow faster. Nope. That's like breaking down the walls of a house every day before the construction crew has a chance to finish fixing it. Over time, that just leads to fatigue, nagging injuries, and smaller arms than you could have had with a smarter plan. Muscles need at least 48 hours, often more, to fully recover from a hard session. Training them 2 or 3 times a week is plenty, as long as you're hitting them with enough quality work each time. More isn't always better. Smarter is better. Stress management also plays a role in recovery that most people ignore. If your life outside the gym is a wreck, no sleep, terrible diet, high stress from work or relationships, your body is constantly in fight or flight mode, cortisol stays elevated, recovery slows down, and your training results suffer. You might be crushing it in the gym, but if you're stressed to the max outside of it, your arms won't show the effort. Sometimes the best arm workout you can do is taking care of your mind, relaxing, meditating, taking a walk, or just shutting off your phone and unwinding. Let's also not forget hydration. Muscles are mostly water, and even slight dehydration can mess with performance and recovery. If you're constantly training hard but only sipping on soda or coffee, you're missing out. Water helps transport nutrients, keeps your joints lubricated, and keeps you performing at your best. Drink enough so your body isn't running on fumes. Now here's a kicker. Recovery isn't just a side note, it's a multiplier. The harder and smarter you train, the more critical recovery becomes. If you slack on recovery, you're basically throwing away half the effort you put in during your workouts. But if you nail recovery, your results multiply. That's why some lifters who train a little less but recover properly often end up looking bigger, stronger, and healthier than the ones grinding themselves into dust 7 days a week. There's also the mental side of recovery. When you feel rested, fueled, and recovered, your workouts feel amazing. You walk into the gym ready to push, ready to add that extra rep or that extra 5 pounds. That's how progressive overload actually happens consistently. On the flip side, if you're dragging from lack of sleep, undereating, and stress, every workout feels like a battle. You can't overload because you're already running on empty. So recovery isn't just about growth. It's about setting yourself up to train better next time. So here's the big picture. If you want arms that are truly strong and aesthetic, don't just obsess over the curls and extensions. Respect the process that happens after the workout. Get your sleep, eat enough protein and calories, manage your stress, hydrate, and give your muscles time to repair. That's when the magic happens. Training is the stimulus, recovery is the growth. Skip recovery, and you'll always wonder why your arms don't look the way you want. Prioritize it, and you'll finally see the results of all that hard work.